welcome back. And of course, as we mentioned very early in the show, the focus of this conversation is talking to Belize City Mayor, second-time Mayor, Mayor Darrell Bradley. And we're joined by Councilor Dr. Elaine Gonzalez as well. Fresh, it's not even a week since municipal elections, 5 days later, and we get to talk about what this particular win means for you. So let's start off. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here after a long weekend, and I'm sure celebrations were included as well.
A little bit of celebration.
Yes, of course.
Now, Mayor, I want to start off by getting just your initial reaction, what it feels like to be elected for a second term in office.
Well, of course, there's a little bit of joy in relation to being re-elected. It means that many of the things that were done, you are vindicated because the residents of Belize City feel comfortable in your leadership. And I also think that there's a great degree of humility that has to go into that because, of course, when people elect you to office, they expect that you will perform. And I think that we performed at a relatively high degree in the first term, so that there's a little bit of humility and anxiety going into that to say that, well, if people have confidence in you a second time, you need to live up to that burden and sacrifice, if you will, and you need to deliver for a second term.
And what did the win mean for you?
Well, first of all, Marlene, thanks for having me on your show. It's the first time here. I'm thankful for the second one, of course. This is my second time running as city councilor, and the first time was very exciting. I think this time, as the mayor mentioned, you feel a bit humble because you know that you have performed and you have done a good job, and the people have recognized that. And the people said, oh, well, these city councilors have performed, and so I'm thankful for the re-election again. It feels exciting again to be elected and to continue with the work that we have started already.
Just a very general question. What means more? Your first election is more of, I trust you to give you a try.
Yeah.
What does the second election mean?
Well, I think the thing that I really got in terms of the second term is consolidation. Like, I think there's a lot of work that was done in terms of the infrastructure, the park projects. We emphasize a lot about governance and accountability. And I think now it is kind of tying up ends and then consolidating. For example, I heard in the campaign the issue of the drainage. I think that that's a fair point. And I think that those are some of the things then that we need to kind of go back, address in a more thorough manner. And then in terms of building on some of the strengths that we were doing, a lot of criticism was levied on our ability to really engage the public, consult. I remember being on the show several times. These are some of the things that we would want to do in terms of really like consolidating so that we have a city council that we don't say was high performing in the last 3 years, but that the entire city has been lifted to another level of leadership. And that when you go on, you could say that, okay, then our city can deliver basic goods and services to residents of Belize City.
Now, obviously, one of the things, and as you mentioned before, there's several criticisms that came out. The drainage was definitely one. And I think it was one you had acknowledged from very early on. I asked you on election day, and I'll ask you again in terms of, does this change the priority? You've given many reasons as to why drainage has not been a priority for the city, or I shouldn't say not a priority, but why you weren't able to execute during your first term. But given that it was such a point that people kept on mentioning during your campaign time, does it change whether or not you will find the funds to be able to do it?
Well, I think that it must, because in an election, one of the good things is that you get to really touch base with the residents in a very intimate way. You're going house to house. You're hearing exactly what people are saying. You are listening to criticisms on Facebook, on the media, and you're hearing that people really want you to address this. So as a leader, I would think that you would be rather very insensitive if you don't pay heed to that. One of the things that we will say is that prior to the election, about a month prior to the election, when we engaged the BML workers, one of the things we really made as a priority is that drainage will be a focus point. You saw them installing culverts at the Hydes Lane area. We're doing a lot of work by the police station. We're continually cleaning out by where Freetown Road is. There is Handyside Street where we've identified as a hotspot. So there are several key and critical areas that we have really kind of tended to focus on. Right now we have two groups of these former BML workers who are exclusively dedicated towards drainage. And then we are also including in any of our future infrastructure works, even the remedial streets that we're doing, culverts and drainage. So we did a lot of these in Caribbean Shores, Sweet Street, Pride Street. We did Queen Helmut Street just prior to the election. A lot of streets in Lake Independence. All of these streets, there was budgetary sums allocated for culverts and drainage. So that we are focusing on it, and I think that our focus needs to be something where we're talking about it more and we're making it more visible. Even on the earlier infrastructures that we've done, there was drainage that was included in all of it, but that wasn't something really that we talked about. And I thought we let the conversation about that get ahead of us. But it has to be something that we prioritize in this 3-year term, because people want to see a more comprehensive approach towards drainage.
Okay. Now, I want to acknowledge at this time that we have been joined as well by re-elected Councilor Alifa Elrington. Hi, good morning and welcome. And I want to ask both of you as well, because we know obviously the mayor has done a substantial amount of media leading up to the campaign and even after the election. But as councillors, being a part of the slate and having to work as well to be able to ensure that you are back on the council again, what was the process like for you, and what does the win represent?
I think the process was very, I wouldn't say tiresome, but we did this before 3 years ago, and we were in it again this time around, and it was very educating to us, because the first 3 times we did it, the first 3 years we did it ago, we weren't sure if we were going to win as councillors. At this time around, the campaign was, I would say, maybe a bit easier, because people already had that assurance of the work that we had done. They already knew who they were going to vote for. They already saw the work that we had put in. So going around in election time, it wasn't too difficult for us campaigning. And then we always campaign as a group. So we bonded together as a group. We campaign together as a group. And when the people see you walking together as a group, they see the mayor, the councillors, you know, they feel comfortable. They ask you questions, you participate in their conversations. They ask you about different developments about the city, what's your plan for the future. And you know, we give them an insight of what we're going to do, and they feel comfortable with us. And I guess that's why they voted for us again.
And for you?
I think for us, to a certain extent, you would have wanted to take it for granted, because you feel confident in what you have done, and you know the work that you've put in is because the change that you wanted in your own city, and you would have hoped that people would have seen that and understood that that is what we were doing. But it was important for us to still hit the streets, because we had 2 new candidates. Hyacinth is not necessarily new, because she has been a councillor before, but Jason is a new candidate, and we needed to establish that regardless of 2 new candidates, we were still working as a team. And therefore, it was important for us to still be on the street, still be out there. It was important for Darrell to always be out there with them, letting everybody know that he has welcomed these 2 persons into our team, and he's prepared to work with these persons, and we will continue to work as a team. And I think our win represents the confidence that Belizeans have in us, and the fact that they have seen the difference. They have seen the changes. They know what it is that they want for themselves, what they want for their children. So they were prepared to re-elect a group who were willing to continue the work that we began 3 years ago.
And as councillors, what would you say is the toughest lesson learned in your first term?
I think for me, primarily, the toughest lesson learned is working with 10 men. That is the most difficult aspect of my 3 years, because you're working with 10 men, and sometimes you have to be one of the boys, and then sometimes you have to remind the boys that you're not one of the boys. And I think that was one of the most difficult things. So welcoming Hyacinth, that's a breath of fresh air in the council. Not to say, because the reality is, and I keep telling this to Darrell, I used to always say this to Darrell, the council is run by women. We have very strong women in our council. Our city administrator is a woman. The 3 of our 4 directors at the council are women. You have Miss Mackenzie, Miss Rodon, and Miss Ordonis. Those are the 3 women who are also a part of our council. And what we did over the last year, we made it inclusive, I think, over the last year and a half. So it's not just a council meeting involving just the councillors. It's a council meeting involving our senior management. They came in and they let us know what is going on, and we have a better understanding. I think the councillors really have a better understanding of how the councillors run now. And so really and truly, again, that's a breath of fresh air because it's more women sitting in a council room.
So it means that after 3 years, you were able to make them recognize that
while
equal, we think and function a bit differently.
Yeah, and you need to have better input from the women. So I think that is one of the toughest parts for me when I started working with 10 men.
Well, I guess with me, part of the toughest part was working with Daryl. Daryl can be very challenging at times, but beside that...
challenging in what sense?
Well, demanding. Because as a city councillor and as I guess as a mayor, when we put our mind at doing something, when we're set at doing something, we have to make sure that it's done. When we want a street done in maybe 2 weeks or a week, we have to be behind the contractors, we have to be behind our staff members, we have to be very vigilant with our workers so that the thing can be done, the job can be done at time. No? But also besides, I just want to mention a bit challenging for me as well is because I also work at the hospital, and sometimes my schedule might clash a bit with the city council schedule. So it's challenging because I have to be juggling between both hospital and coming to city council at times. Sometimes I'll be working night shift the entire night from 7 one night to 7 the following morning, and then I would have to be at the city council the following morning. Or sometimes I would have to be at a meeting and I wouldn't be able to make it at the meeting because I'm at the hospital. But besides all that, I've learned now how to juggle that, and so I've accepted that part of the challenge, and it continues. You know, we continue working together, and I will continue working as a city councillor and working for the people of Belize.
In terms of deciding portfolios at this point, how are you making that decision? Is it collective? Is it based on strengths and weaknesses? What's the decision at this point?
It's based on multiple factors, two of which you have alluded to. What the council does is that at this present moment, before we've been sworn in, there's a lot of discussion in terms of identifying what are right fits, performance-wise. For example, Councillor Elrington can show in relation to the traffic portfolio that our revenues have increased. There's some targeted specific achievements. The buses are more regulated. You have smaller buses. We have a very active taxi committee and traffic advisory board, so that all of those things are going very well. In terms of Dr. Gonzalez, you see that our after-school program, our summer programs are very, very active, going on very well. In terms of public health, he's dealing with it. He's an expert in that. So basically what it will be is that we will do an assessment together in terms of where councillors were in the first 3 years. Of course, we have to incorporate Hyacinth and Jason in terms of the new fold. We lost 2 councillors, and we're getting on 2 councillors. And we meet and we decide what is it we will do in terms of assignments. We also have to do that same process in terms of selecting a deputy mayor. But one of the things that I want to emphasize to members of the public is it has really been an advantage that we have persons who are very qualified running the city. People wonder, how is it that you're able to do a bond? How is it that you're able to do infrastructure? I've heard talk about the managing the finances. Even though the city is in a very challenged position financially and otherwise, you have 11 people who are very qualified in their own right, very successful, and I would put in here very young, mid-level professionals who are able to come together as a team and do a good job in terms of running the city. I wouldn't say that we do an excellent job, but I would say that we do a good job where people can feel confident that your city is moving forward.
And you didn't complete the process with selecting your deputy?
Well, the councillors will again meet, because all of these things, the assignment of portfolio, the law says that the mayor will select the portfolio after consultation with the council, so that we have to consult. The selection of deputy mayor is done by a resolution, so the councillors will meet among themselves, and then we will select a councillor for deputy mayor. And it's been a thing where we follow the practice of a rotation. Every year we select a new councillor, and it's been basically by seniority and by rotation.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I hear very clearly, and in fact, I love the opportunity that we have councillors here as well, because it gives great insight to group dynamics, and those are things that we don't typically get to see. But no, I hear you speak of the professional life of your councillors, And one of the things that was also a concern to people was the balance between your own personal work and your personal obligations, specifically towards your profession, and also the work of the City Council itself. How is it, or what is the plan in terms of being able to reduce the concerns that you've heard over your past term, specifically for you, Mayor Bradley, and I'm sure with you all as councillors as well, so that people don't feel that we're paying these public officers to be able to half do a job and then fully do another?
This is my response. That will not change.
What will not change?
It will not change that councillors have other jobs, like even the mayor.
No, what I'm saying is, how do you reduce the concerns that you're hearing? Obviously, people have a concern. Do you put them at ease and say, these are the amount of hours I'm spending on this job versus that job? Is there a new strategy going to be put in place?
I've never heard that in terms of going on the ground. I've heard it in the media, and I've heard it in terms of in the campaign, and I kind of chalk that off as a little bit of electioneering. The fundamental point is this: you want a mayor who's working. And when I mean working, not working on his own thing, working to move your city forward. We can show members of the public, and this is something that has not been done before. You can look at the mayor previous to me, who served 6 years, and you can look at the mayor previous to her. And we have heard it time and time again. This 3 years, you have seen an unprecedented amount of work. I tend to be a very humble person, so I will take that what it is. It's not I who am saying that. Members of the public have said that over the last 3 years, you can see work going on in the city to a significant degree, to the point where we can laud 140 streets. We can talk about parks, we can talk about improvements in governance and systematic planning, urban planning in the city. All of those things are going on under a leadership with a mayor and with councillors who have other jobs. So that if you're getting such a high-performing city council, something that you've not gotten before, clearly the fact that somebody is doing something else, which is part of their professional development, that's not an issue. So don't worry about that. What you should worry about is ensuring that your mayor and city councillors are not doing anything untoward in terms of any kind of irregular activities, and you're seeing work on the ground, which is what you're seeing. I remember in the last election, people were worried about how much the mayor and councillors make. And I made one simple point. As long as your salary is reasonable, you don't care what the person is making, as long as they're working, as long as I can show you streets that are being built and improvements that are being made to the city. And I will end with this point. The vision and strategy, and I would say the right formula for the city, is not where you have political people, because I'm a politically elected person. You really don't want me there 24 hours a day. You don't want me from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening, because what you see me doing is I start hire people, I start fire people, I start getting all kind of things which your mayor should not really get into. What the mayor and the city council is to do by law is to run like a board of directors. Your mayor is an executive chairman, so that I have executive functions. I'm very much on the ground. And you have councillors who, and Alifa mentioned it, every council meeting we have our directors and our senior leadership. So any of these councillors want to ask any question to any manager, director, or officer, they could do it right away in a council meeting. And the city should really be run by the city administrator and the technical staff. All of this is part of the policy that we have put in place, so that you separate what is political from political, and you deal with what is administrative in an administrative sense.
And we do remember that you had the HR policy that was signed by all the mayors.
So all of that is part of creating a professional staff at the city council, where your city is really run not by politicians, but it's run by people who have continuity. One of the things that I'm very proud of is that when I took office, I didn't change the city administrator, I didn't change my secretary, I didn't change my driver. That's what you should do. When the mayor comes in, the mayor meets a technical staff. The mayor brings his vision and his insight and a certain drive together with the council. And when you leave, if I was voted out of office, I left as a city administrator there. This is the first time the city administrator has outserved a mayor. This is the first time in the history of our modern city. Because you want those people to have security of tenure and to have institutional memory and to build the capacities at City Council. I don't build the streets. I don't run the traffic. We need to promote and encourage our staff to do a very good job, and that's what we have done.
Okay. Now, moving forward with the 3 years that lies ahead, and I want to start off a bit with Alifa as well, because the traffic issue was one we know at the very beginning of the council term, the decisions that were made, they had a bit of growing pains along with them. What is the expectation in terms of what you hope to achieve in the next 3 years?
I think, to be very honest and to be realistic, there's still going to be growing pains. There's a lot of difficulty for us when it comes to traffic because people just don't want to change. And that's one of the difficulties that we've had. I have situations with my own staff at the Belize City Council who choose to break the law. And I'm saying, how can I say to Belizeans, look, I want to change the law. I want to do it so that the city runs better. I want to do it that there's more fluidity within the traffic system if my own people are breaking the law. So in City Council itself, we have to continue to do a lot of work. We have to continue to allow people to learn the law, understand the law, and understand where it is that we're going. And I think when it comes to traffic, what we'll have to do a lot of public relations, much more public relations. One of the difficulties I find is that we keep putting roundabouts all over the city. All over the city. There's one being built on the highway right now. The one that just completed on Central American Boulevard. And I think a lot of people don't know how to drive around the roundabout. And it continues to cause difficulty within our traffic system. I know that when they were doing it, oh, it's going to relieve traffic problems, it's going to cause ease of this and ease of that. But if people don't know how to drive around the roundabout, it's going to cause more difficulty than the relief that it seeks to bring. So one of the things that we are going to do is more public relations. I remember when I had when we did the public consultation at the park with the taxi drivers, I said to them, this won't be the last public consultation. We're going to continue to do public consultations because that wasn't the first one, it was the second that we had. And we need to continue to do more public consultation because we need to understand what their position is and they need to understand what our position is. One of the things that I want to do is to establish a more established taxi system where we regulate it better, where you can identify where taxes come from, who are the persons responsible for these taxes, and actually because we have several cooperatives and associations, but we need to work the cooperatives and associations, make them responsible for their people. So that is the direction where we're going right now in the regulation of the taxi system, in the regulation of the dollar van system, which you raise your eyes. I know it causes a difficulty, but it also serves a need. But we have to be able to balance the two, and that's where we're looking forward to go, being able to balance the two.
And public transportation?
Public
we
transportation.
know you had issues with the bus systems in the downtown area as well.
Well, with respect to the buses, we've been working very, very hard to get them in a system. I remember going to work one day to my legal office, and my legal secretary came and said to me, Miss Alifa, you don't know the experience I had this morning. He said, it's the first time I had to walk from Government House to work. I said, okay, that's fine if you have to walk from Government to work, sir. He said, but no, there are people asking, why are you letting off people at the Government House? And the bus driver said, because Councillor Alifa Elrington Hyde, you see that letter there? She write the letter and she said, I have to drop it at Government House. And then he turned around and said, you see that young lady there? She worked for Councillor Alifa Hyde, so that must she even typed the letter, so I can't make you come off any other way. Yeah. And I have gotten, it seems that persons are getting into the practice. You don't hear as much complaints anymore because it's something that they're getting used to. So it's hopeful that we can have more consultation for people to understand that this is not something that we want to do, that we're pulling out of the air. It's something where we're trying to establish a much more fluidity within the system, and we're trying to make it easier for us to get around.
Now, the behavior change in it is really one of your biggest obstacles. Yes. And, you know, if there was a quick relief for behavior change, you know, it would be a multi-million-dollar industry. Yeah, come on. But the public relations is one aspect, having people understand. However, really, you touched on one of the issues, and I know Mayor Bradley will probably be the first to respond to it, is people want to see that the standards are applied across the board.
Yeah.
And if I were to use one very simple and very evident example, the tinting regulations that were once in place. Who's allowed to have it, who's not allowed to have it, although the regulations are that everybody's supposed to stick to a particular standard. So when we see or when we hear of examples where this is how it's supposed to be done and others, except for the few who do it another way, it can become an issue.
Yeah, I will say this, and for the law to be respected, it must be equally applied. That's actually a fundamental principle across the board. And I will emphasize this, that wherever anything comes directly under the jurisdiction of the city council, we have ensured that everything is done across the board. During the election, I heard a commercial, actually. I was at my law office and a vehicle was driving around, and I heard my good friend, the Honorable Michael Finnegan, lambaste me in a very unkind way. The mayor not like listen, answer his telephone. I had a minister of government and I had to call and I asked for my property tax. I thought to myself, because as I was sitting back, I thought to myself, people are criticizing this thing, and this thing actually represents good government. No minister of government can call me, not even the prime minister, and say that, Darrell, I want you to not follow the regulations. You have a minister, Michael Finnegan. He is complaining because he was assessed increased taxes, and he is trying to call to get that tax reduced. You cannot do that. That will never ever happen. We have processes at the city council, and the processes will apply to every single person, irrespective of your place and your station. So I can't speak directly to tinting because there was dual enforcement there, but I can tell you in relation to every single thing that the city council does, there is no respect of persons. Ministers of government have been brought to court for property taxes. I can speak to that directly because they call me and I say, go to court and pay your bill. Ministers of government have gotten traffic tickets. My vehicle has gotten a traffic ticket. I pay my traffic ticket because the law must operate everybody. And when people see that, then they'll have confidence in it.
And while I can respect what you're saying and speaking on an individual level, oftentimes where management is concerned, there are the rules in place and you may stick to the standards, but are there sufficient checks and balances within the systems to ensure that perhaps persons within the council are the ones who cut the brakes?
We have a good complaint system right now, and I can tell you that the councillors, because of changes that we've done where directors come into the council meeting and they have to answer to councillors, people, and that's what really the council is supposed to do. When you are removed from management functions, then you can really be the people's representative. So I get a lot of emails, I get a lot of text messages, I get a lot of calls, and people tell me, Mayor, I want you to look into this, Mayor, I want you to look into that. And then I can call my city administrator, I can call a director, I can say, well, people are complaining about this, what are we doing about this? And a councillor, all of the councillors can really function as being the people's voice. And that's our job, to check management, to ensure that the oversight function is there and strategically the city is moving forward, and we're doing that. I can't tell you that it's every single check that's in place, but we're doing it.
Just about to pull up video. No, just kidding.
Oh, why? When is good?
Now let's move into moving forward, because I think that's what's most important.
Sure.
The hallmark for the first 3 years, and this is of course personal, is infrastructure. People will think Darrell Bradley and Council that first term will think infrastructure. What is the hope and plan for the second term for the entire council?
Well, I think on a macro level, we must look at this, and I was talking to several people who are key government officials, and when you look at the city needs, and I talk about it all the time, the city needs a economic development plan and strategy, because that's how we keep our population. If you look at the census, the population of Belize City is shrinking, it's not growing, and that is a signal that our city is actually dying. When you lose your population, that's very, very dangerous. So things that we're really trying to promote is the Northern Highway Project, that 5.4 mile stretch of road. I believe that that is fundamental to the economic vibrancy of Belize City. You already see shops and things like that, large buildings going up there. and that represents jobs, and that represents activity and life coming back to our city. The Chetumal Bridge Lake Independence Project, when that's done, there's going to be an overlaying of businesses and commercial activity and governmental services, National Bank building, a police station. All of those represent jobs and other activities that's going to come to an area which is in the buffer of the south side of Belize City. So that you are still going to see a significant amount of public sector spending on infrastructure project this coming 3 years. And what that represents, and we hope, is that there will be a multiplier effect, so that that will be stimulating in terms of creating jobs and creating activity that promote growth to our city. Another thing that I think we really need to get into, and we're going to try to promote that, is more individual ownership of the city. Our sanitation bill is still too high, and we need more residents to take greater ownership. So Councillor Elrington has done a tremendous job in traffic in terms of really changing people's attitudes, but we need to do that across the board, so that we have a citizenry that has civic pride, that has a sense of community, that is more individual, responsible for their own areas and their communities. I always talk about the street that your mom and I live on, and when you pass her house, it's a very nice area, manicured lawn, and very, very nice. I keep my area like that, and residents need to also, so that there's going to be a lot of public relations in terms of what we need to do to beautify our city, to really consolidate some of the things that we're doing.
Let me just jump on one last thing, because we know we also heard it as a concern. It's parks and recreational spaces for the south side of the city.
I mentioned this before, and it's very big. I think that is a fair concern, because we have done parks and playground upgrades in the north and in the south side, but not to the degree that we've done it at BTL Park, Memorial Park. Battlefield Park is on the south side, but not in the traditional south side that people appreciate. One of the things that I will say is that we are looking very closely with working on creating a park in the Lake Independence heart, which is between Mahogany the River, Central American Boulevard, and LaCroix Boulevard, so that we're looking at a space, a large enough space to locate a park in that area. But when we talk about park development, it's not only the infrastructure monies. You can look at BTL Park. There's a security strategy in there that involves the police. There's a maintenance and monitoring plan that involves park goers and park vendors. There's a lot of things that go into making a space workable, and that's something, the magic formula, we've not found that yet in any other place that we can really identify. This area that we've identified in the south side that we really want to localize, we don't even own land there. So like, it's something that we have to build from the ground up. It's not a cop-out, and I am recognizing that that's a fair criticism. But when we spend public funds on something like that, we need to ensure that it's going to be something that will last for much future generations of Belizeans.
All right. Well, with that, we are out of time. And of course, this is just one of many conversations we'll have over the next couple of years, we're sure of. So I just wanted to have that first sit down and find out what the particular win means and what we're looking forward to in the next 3 years. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, it's to focus on Child Stimulation Month. What are the activities that are going to be held? And also, while early childhood development is important. So stay tuned.